Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Agenda Forum on Wednesday the 7th of May 2025 at 6 p.m, and I declare this meeting open. Just like to begin with our acknowledgement of country. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present and their descendants. Just read the disclaimer. The terms and conditions of entry into this meeting are posted at the entry of the public gallery. Members of the public are advised to read them prior to attending this meeting and abide by them. Attendance and apologies. I have the following councillors present: Councillor Deputy Mayor Ian Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Jones and Councillor Miles and Councillor Zanino. And I have a leave of absence from Councillor Henderson, and I also have apologies from Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Oringo, Councillor McCulloch and Councillor Singh. Declarations of financial proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality. Mr Stephen Kane declared an impartiality interest in items 14.3.2 S76, Ministerial Order to initiate proposed amendment number 214 to Local Planning Scheme number 17, to add Transport Depot as an additional use on lot 812, number 55, Vale Road, Hazelmere, LPS 17-214, as his son is employed by Planning Solutions. Now I'll ask, does anyone else have any declarations of... No? If you do, just hand them up. And move to part 2, which is petitions. Yep. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a petition here. I'm not sure how many signatures on it. It was put in my letterbox last night. I'll just read it. To ask the City of Swan to find a solution to the lack of parking at Woodlake Community Centre in Ellenbrook. Seniors from Ellenbrook Seniors Social Space who hire and regularly attend the centre are finding it very difficult to get parking as it's being used by other persons not attending the centre, and they require parking available close to the entry. Also, the child health nurses and other users of the centre who pay for the hire have the same issue.
Thank you very much. If you'd like to hand that up, we can take that to be tabled. Thank you. We move to part 3, which is reports and notices of motion. 6.1, additional information from officers. There was nil. And 6.2, deputations. In accordance with current procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations were required by 6 p.m. on Tuesday, 6th of May 2025. All written deputations received by 3 p.m. on Tuesday, the 6th of May 2025, were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening.
Question.
Question, Deputy Mayor.
I guess it's a point of order. Do we have a quorum? There's only 7 councillors, elected members present.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you. As this is not a decision-making forum, it's not required to have a quorum.
Thank you.
But may I ask where it says that in the meeting procedures, local law or the Local Government Act, because it says application, all meetings, agenda forums and briefing sessions are to be conducted in accordance with blah, 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 and this local law. So we don't have a quorum right now. So unless we've actually got you can point to where it is in the Act or somewhere that we can carry on. I don't think we can.
Mr. CEO.
So a decision-making forum requires a quorum. You do not have decisions to make tonight. So the sections that apply here that talk about public questions, deputations, etc., that's how the meeting procedures are covering. If you needed to make a decision, you'd have to have a quorum, which you don't. But because you've got no decision, you can conduct an agenda briefing with as few as one person here potentially.
Where does it say that in the meeting procedure, local law, or the Local Government Act, or any regulation?
Through the chair. So the Local Government Act specifies what you're allowed for decision making. That's contained in section 5 of the Local Government Act. There is no other decision being made here, so there's no other stipulation that says you can't hold a briefing, but as I said, in accordance with these rules.
Which section? Because from what I can tell, we don't have a quorum, and we've been told in the past that these meeting procedures and the law applies at agenda forums, and if there's only 70 councillors, there's no quorum, regardless of decisions or not decisions.
No, that's incorrect. So the piece that you need relates to decisions, and if I go to the Local Government Act, where we talk about voting, which is then what's required for ordinary, for an absolute majority, which requires an absolute majority of all council positions, whether they're vacant or not, which is 8, a simple majority being 7. They are the only stipulations you need. However, as you've noted, there is no decision to be made tonight. You are listening to information. The information must be delivered in accordance with within your meeting procedures, which stipulates the length of time people can speak. That's covered by your meeting. The sequence of which the meeting is presented, including petitions, that's covered by your meeting. If you needed to make a decision, then you would not have, you would have a simple, I think you've got 7 here tonight, you've got 6. You haven't got a quorum for decision making. But Councillor Johnson, there is no decision making to be made.
Where is that in the Local Government Act? The meeting procedures are clear. They apply to this meeting. There's not a quorum, and therefore we can't continue.
So
The law's absolutely clear.
I'm giving you the advice I'm required to do, which is under the Act. Were you required to make a decision, you would not have a quorum. But you do not have decisions to make tonight, and therefore you do not need a quorum. Councillor Bowman may have a point on this.
Councillor Bowman.
Can I ask a question, Madam Mayor? If the Manager of Governance can explain to me what Section 519 of the Local Government Act means when it talks about the quorum for a meeting of council or committee. When it talks about a meeting of council, is this a meeting of council?
Thank you.
I can answer that, but I'll leave the governance.
Yep.
I guess it depends what a meeting means.
Just one
This is a
moment,
meeting.
councillor
Yeah,
Johnson.
and if I may, through you, Mayor, I think Councillor Johnson, one thing in our meeting procedures, local law, we do differentiate between an agenda forum and a meeting. Though I take your point that the meeting procedures are identified as to apply to council meetings, committee meetings, agenda forums and briefing sessions. But we do differentiate within those meeting procedures that the definition of what a meeting is and what an agenda forum is. And the CEO is correct in what he's saying, as you of course well know, that this is not a forum for decision making.
That's true, but where does it say that a quorum does not apply to an agenda forum? I can't say that, so there's no quorum, so we can't continue. That's my view. We've been very strict about rules in the past. We've got lots of rules and regulations. Councillors aren't allowed to indicate in an agenda forum whether they're going to move an alternate motion or not. Now here we are with something quite fundamental. There's no quorum.
Thank you. If you could just let us have a look for a moment.
Also through you, Mayor, when I look at, and going back to Councillor Bowman's question, section 519, when you actually look at Division 2 under Part 5, it talks about council holding ordinary council meetings and special council meetings. So it's my interpretation of 519 to mean that the quorum relates to a meeting, an ordinary meeting or a special council meeting or a committee, as it may be where it's a committee meeting.
Thank you.
I'll wait till Val just drops her mic. And if I can add 9.37, which is the using minutes of the meeting, and it describes meeting minutes means the meeting of a council or committee. So when you read the two sections together, a special meeting, an ordinary meeting, is a meeting where you are going to make decisions in a forum, not a forum. And the minutes of those are the minutes of those meetings. You do not record minutes of this particular forum.
Okay.
But we do. We have a document that records what happened in the meeting, in the agenda forum. So I'm seeing that the law's clear. There's no quorum. The meeting procedures local law applies here. We've been told that many times. And we've only got 7 councillors.
Thank you, councillor Johnson. Councillor Bowman.
Madam Mayor, a question. If Councillor Johnson has a concern that the meeting shouldn't occur, can he just leave and we can continue? Is that an option to him?
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Through the chair, yes, at any stage a council member can leave. And you would also note, in terms of the requirement for attendances at meetings, that it is not obligatory on a council member to attend an agenda forum. You can miss 3 council meetings and be disqualified, but you don't have to attend an agenda forum. So it's quite clear through the thread of these sections, the definition of an ordinary meeting, a special meeting, the requirements of minutes of a meeting, the attendance requirements for a meeting, that this is not a meeting. The application of the meeting procedures local law covers those sections which don't happen in an ordinary council meeting, that being public question time, deputations, receipt of petitions. And that is why, Councillor Johnson, these sessions, the meeting procedures apply to that.
So
Councillors?
let's just go back to 1.4. Application. All meetings, agenda forums and briefing sessions are to be conducted in accordance with the relevant provisions of the Local Government Act, etc. and this local law. So we don't have a quorum. So we can't continue. It's that clear. People can say it's not a meeting, but it's covered in the meeting procedures local law. There's no quorum.
I'm happy to continue.
That's good. So am I. But we don't have a
CEO?
quorum.
Thank you, and I'll add, Councillor Johnson, come back to the terms used. You don't find the term quorum described in the definitions. And the reason not described in definitions, it's contained in the Act. And the Act specifies what the quorum relationships or requirements are for meetings, which are defined as ordinary meetings, special meetings, meetings of the committees. So it was quite clear the application of the meeting procedures, which is your local law, covers the procedural aspects of this, but there is no requirement for a quorum.
In which case, why, under points of order, does it say the absence of a quorum? So the meeting procedures are clear. We've been quite strict about this in the past. Remember, councillors aren't allowed to announce what alternate motions they're going to produce. Here we are. There's no quorum, which is a fundamental part of the Act. It is a meeting. It's defined in the meeting procedures local law. It's that simple.
Gary?
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, we don't agree with what you've said. My function is to provide advice to council. I've done that tonight. As Councillor Bowman has said, if you do not feel comfortable and you wish to leave, that is your option. However, Madam Mayor, I would recommend continuing with the briefing, the agenda forum briefing, as that's what is required now. And noting we are live streaming this, so that if anyone is concerned, they can go and seek departmental advice on anything that's been said tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr.
In which
CEO.
case, can I request,
Now, I'll ask council.
through you, Madam Mayor, to the CEO, can you please get legal advice after this meeting, preferably from the department, as to how this applies? And
Thank
I
you.
think we should continue because we have got people in the public gallery.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's my job to continue the meeting and to pursue it if you'd like to finish. Thank you. Now, councillors, we move on to 14.2.1, which is the adoption of the draft Local Biodiversity Action Plan, and we have an in-person deputation not in support of the officer's recommendation from Ms Janzek. Thank you, Ms Zek, and you have 3 minutes. Or just pop that microphone on if that's all right. Thanks. That's okay, yeah, we won't start it yet.
No, the texture is not on. It's still not gone. It hasn't gone red yet. It just needs to be energised.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Oh, that sounds better. No, one at a time.
Thank you.
I'll start again. Enormous changes occurring across the city, particularly along the western side of the river. Intimate knowledge of the consequences, the realm of local residents, should also be the realm of council staff and councillors. Being aware is the responsibility of the city. Incorporation of impacts into documents like the draft Local Biodiversity Action Plan and addressing them is your role. Local hydrology is critical to the survival of all natural ecosystems, but this is increasingly challenged by changes due to development. Addressing the effectiveness of local water management strategies and water-sensitive urban design are essential and urgent, but not included in the action plan. Estimated tree losses are around 77,000 to date, just in the urban area Nangara Road to Reed Highway. This figure will almost double on completion, and this is only a portion of clearing that is occurring across the LGA. Not reporting data doesn't mean clearing is not happening. Unfortunately, reality is not translated into quantifiable actions to address this massive loss of habitat and the threat it poses to the survival of biodiversity within the city. The clearance of huge areas of native habitat since European settlement has forced native fauna to adapt to other Australian natives and exotics for survival. These are now just as important as native vegetation, but they don't feature in the draft document. The EPA Carnaby's Cockatoo Recovery Plan 2013 states, while planting of species that support Carnaby's cockatoo is effective over long term and encouraged, protection and regeneration of existing habitat is significantly more efficient and effective. Therefore, efforts in this recovery plan are primarily directed towards protection and enhancement of existing habitat. All levels of government require protection and restoration of habitat to be undertaken, and yet the action plan doesn't address this. Mapping of all areas needs to be undertaken urgently, as slip maps are broad scale and need to be ground truth to provide baseline information on which to make decisions. This mapping would determine priority actions and locations, crucial first steps for identifying habitat to be retained. The city has multiple work functions capable of contributing to improved ecological linkages in the city. This is a feedback comment to one of the submissions. Improved ecological linkages is a good example of what the plan needs to define, plan, fund, execute, measure and report on. That is what an action plan should encompass. These are just some of the acute and critical topics not covered in the Local Biodiversity Action Plan. Incorporation of these and completion of an urgently needed effective action plan could be more easily achieved by reviewing the draft in conjunction with the Swan Community Environmental Alliance, which represents a broad sector of community groups across the LGA. I will finish with a quote from the Local Biodiversity Action Plan. This action plan identifies concise actions that can be implemented within the corporate, business and planning processes of the city, allowing the city to meet its local biodiversity vision, goals and objectives. No, it doesn't. This is precisely what is missing, and it's outrageous to suggest otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Zek. Councillors, does anyone have any questions for Ms Zek? No questions? Thank you very much for coming in and giving your deputation.
Thank you.
We have an in-person deputation in conditional support of the officer's recommendation from Ms Fiona Ordson-Ross, and this is the Bushmead Conservation Cobbers. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, Dr Fiona Ordson-Ross, Bushmead Conservation Cobbers. Good evening, everyone. I support the development of a local biodiversity action plan. I am pleased to see that the current draft is more readable than the previous version. I appreciate the intent of the action plan, but feel, with little change to the actions list from the previous draft, that it remains more of a plan to make an action plan. That is, it's sort of an action plan on trainer wheels. I recommend a look at the biodiversity plans of neighbouring councils. Kalamunders has over 60 different actions across 5 key focus areas, and Mundaring's has 110 listed actions. That compares to the much shorter list in Section 3 of the City of Swans Plan. I am glad that ecological linkages now makes an appearance in the 11 listed actions in the City of Swans Plan, as linkages and wildlife corridors are fundamental to the long-term success of biodiversity efforts. They should actually be a key focus of the plan. Resources are limited, so natural areas that fall within linkages and corridors should typically be prioritised. Our neighbours, Mundaring, have taken the still relevant regional level ecological linkages and then identified additional local level wildlife corridors to form a web of finer scale connections between the Shire's natural assets. I'd also like to point out that they've also included key waterways in their work on linkages, recognising that many watercourses are themselves important wildlife corridors at a local level. I think the waterways are very inadequately dealt with in the 11 actions listed in the City of Swans Plan. Kalamunda and Mundaring's action plan on ecological linkages includes specific actions covering both public and private land, including, for example, a focus on management of introduced pests and increasing habitat values in or adjacent to those corridors, developing and implementing a rehabilitation and management program on a site-by-site basis, and, where appropriate, targeting the acquisition of public open space and new conservation reserves to support wildlife corridors. In contrast, the City of Swans linkages action 1.9 is vague. The scoping comment's worse. The city has multiple work functions capable of contributing to improved ecological linkages in the city. That's it. If you look at our neighbouring councils' plans, you can quickly see the room for improvement in our draft. I've just picked one, albeit key topic to cover, but I think it shows why we're asking for more from the City of Swans' final action plan. Perhaps approve and issue this report with a big part 1 on the cover. Employ a biodiversity officer and get them to produce a real action plan, a far more detailed action plan for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr Ordson-Ross. And I'll ask if there's any questions, so you might need to just come back up to the microphone. Councillors, are there any questions? No questions. Thank you very much for your deputation tonight. We move to 14.3.1, which is proposed amendment number 3 to the Henley Brook Local Structure Plan, Swan SP 2019/4/C. And we had a written deputation from Mr James McCullum and Taylor Burrell Barnett. I'll ask in part 3.3, councillors, are there any questions in regard to the items on the agenda? Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a few questions about 14.2.2, the Youth Services Operational Review. I was going to ask, In terms of what the city provides now, have we had a look at other Band 1 councils in terms of what they provide for youth services and compared that?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr Bishop.
Through you, Madam Mayor. We do have present tonight the Manager Community and Library Services and also the Coordinator of Youth Services. In view of the detail in this report and some of the operational natures, I might like to refer that to the Manager Community and Library Services in the first instance, who will be able to give a more detailed response.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, we have benchmarked to some extent, Councillor Miles. It is very difficult to do that because every local government seems to address youth development in a different model of operation. I would say that we have commenced benchmarking with our partners because we've reached out to them and asked if we could undertake this. They've committed to do that. So it would not be fair to say that we've done a detailed benchmarking exercise, but certainly as we go through, we always keep an eye on what's happening elsewhere. But I think there would be more benchmarking later, but it will need the whole sector of youth development to want to contribute.
Thank you, Ms Summers. Councillor Bowman. Another one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions are all on 14.2.2, and just following on from Councillor Miles' question, would it not be that not so difficult to benchmark the percentage of rates or expenditure a Tier 1 local government spends on youth services and compare it to ours, and if so, has that been done?
Thank you, Mr Bishop.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, we haven't done a benchmarking on percentage of expenditure versus rates or something like that. No.
Further question? Thank you.
Thank you. And noting this is an operational service review rather than the youth plan, which is also under review, I'll ask the staff to note the question tonight about benchmarking, and as part of that, come back and include some information for council members.
The next question is the establishment of the youth mayor role. Can staff tell me what Tier 1 local governments currently have a youth mayor?
Mr Bishop.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll see if the Manager, Community and Library Services or Coordinator may know.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Tier 1 local governments, the only one we know that has a youth mayor is Wanneroo, but it is for a much younger age group than our youth leadership committee.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, next question. The two youth outreach officers that were grant funded, my understanding is they were positions for a certain period of time. Looking at the report, we have not got grant funding. Can staff show me where in the budget that these two new positions are included, because they're obviously for a fixed term for grant funding. They're not a carry-on position, and I don't recall seeing these as new FTEs.
Mr Bishop.
Through you, Madam Mayor, they are in the draft budget.
So as and listed as additional new FTEs?
I don't believe they'll be shown as additional because they're existing now, but I'll have to take it on notice to give the detail where it's shown in the budget.
And so the follow-up question would be, when this was previously agreed, there were only positions that were created for the term of the grant funding.
I think the CEO has some additional information.
Yes, you might remember, Councillor Bowman, we covered this during the budget workshops, including the length of time that the position for grant funded, which extends into the financial year, August to September, from member. So there's partial grant funding for there. We did include it in the over FT numbers. It's counted as part of that, with a recommendation shown at the time and during the workshops that what the effectiveness of the positions have been doing, particularly on a reduction in youth crime and antisocial behaviour.
Okay, so follow-up question to that, for any other positions for a period of time, and the period of time runs out, and staff wants to continue, will we be seeing those in the budget documents as new positions, because they are not positions that were supposed to continue? And there was a couple that were mentioned in IT that were for a period of time. So is that something that we'll be getting in future? Because we didn't get it in this one.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we did include that detail in the budget notes, position by position, noting we refer to the IT ones as the ones that were on fixed term contracts that were coming to the end, not this year, but in 2 or 3 years' time as part of the end of the one council. I know Councillor Johnson asked the question specifically on 6 or so FTEs that were dropping out, but we account for every position in the overall numbers. The mix of funding, in some cases, some of it is grant funded, some of it is muni funded. Where we are choosing or recommending to you to retain a position, we'll always present a justification, as we did with the youth officers, to show the effect of their work.
Madam Mayor, recommendation 4, can someone please explain to me how we're going to include formalisation of feedback between an informal group?
Mr Bishop?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The steps proposed are covered in the report. I'm just see if I can find. There's about 6 or 7 proposed actions. So the proposed way of formalising it more is for the business of each of these youth meetings to be minuted, and a copy of these minutes to be made available to elected members on request. A summary of key actions and information will be published on the City website. A section for Swan Youth Crew information will be added on the website. A formal report will be submitted at the end of the financial year, along with the option of a council briefing. City officers will ensure that the Swan Youth Crew are informed of any council reports, recommendations or decisions that relate to young people or the youth plan objectives and actions. Council members are invited to attend any of the meetings, and regular Councillor on the Couch sessions is another forum to share information. Swan Youth Crew can also share information via the ward community updates. The establishment of a youth mayor role will be further explored with young people before making a recommendation on this aspect of youth leadership.
So thank you for reading out what I've read in the report. But my question was, how are you proposing to formalise an informal group? So are we giving power now to any informal group to give formal recommendations to this council? Because that's how I see and read recommendation 4.
CEO?
I come back and just pick up your earlier comment, Councillor Bowman. It was you had asked how we're going to formalise the communications, which is what Mr Bishop had just read, not how an informal group. So we have a number of informal groups. If you think of our friends groups or any of our environmental groups, they're not formed under council, but having a basis by which we can provide communication back to you is what he has just listed out. The intention is not to try and make the youth forum, youth mayoral group, leadership group into something like a mini council. They have no decision-making responsibilities. They have no meeting procedures, local laws that govern them. They're a conduit to provide information back to you and to the city as a whole. So we're not going to try and make them into something rigid and conservative, but we are trying to regularise the communications that come back from them to keep you abreast of what youth are thinking.
On page 131 of the report, it talks about the success of the current Balladura youth outreach projects, and it talks about improving health and wellbeing of city staff. How's that improved the health and wellbeing of city staff?
Mr Bishop? Okay.
Thank you. I'll deal with that initially. And some of which I'll say I have to guard my comments on because it relates to confidential surveys of staff. Each year, as part of our responsibilities now under the Work Health and Safety Act, we are responsible for the psychosocial welfare of our staff. There are many instances where staff come under threat. People coming to the front counter, verbally abusing, physically abusing, people sending emails in threatening self-harm. We had one just the other day where we had to advise the police to take an urgent intervention for the individual. People threatening our rangers, our parking officers, etc. Now, we know that at the Ballajura Library and in the leisure complex, the staff had been subject to significant intimidation, and that had been reported back to us as representing a significant psychosocial threat. Now, we don't exclude people from coming into any of our venues unless they do represent a threat. The recent survey results showed a marked change. They showed staff feeling safe, feeling confident, feeling that the issues that were presenting with youth were being addressed. That related very directly to this engagement program with the youth outreach officers. The very people who were intimidating people weren't in that environment. They're being diverted to youth programs, they're engaged. So we know we have empirical evidence. I've seen the report. I can't share the report with you. I can give you an assurance that the physical and the mental health of our staff is improved by this program.
Would that not be a police matter instead? If you've got youth intimidating, doing standover, whatever, of staff, is that not a police matter?
So if someone verbally abused you in the street, called you names, came up, gesticulated, the police are not going to attend to that. The police busy enough dealing with a significant crime, break-in, burglary, robbery, and same thing, other risks. We call the police anytime there is a physical threat, someone standing at the counter waving a metal rod or something of that nature. But much of the abuse that comes to staff is just that. If we can take that environment away, if we can make their workplaces comfortable places for them to work, so when they open the doors of the library, the people come in there, or they open the doors of the youth centre, they come in there, or the leisure centre, they come in there, and they don't verbally abuse staff. That is how we know we've got improvement.
And final question, the report, if I read it right, suggests we'll now continue funding these two positions that are only going to be temporary, but we're going to put them back in the same spot where we've reduced the issues. Wouldn't it? Why are you putting them or recommending putting them back in a spot where it's reduced and not moving them to the next bad spot? Because I'm sure if it's psychosocial hazards of staff at Ballajura, which has now been reduced, we've probably got psychosocial hazard of staff at Allenbrook, Midland, or anything like that. So why isn't it being moved there, and why are they going to be permanently based in Ballajura?
Well, I'll deal with the first part, then I'll speak to Mr. Bishop, because as I see the staff nodding in the background, knowing that they're not permanently based in Ballajura. I have an office that's in the Midland Administration building, but I'm not there every single day. These staff work out of Ellenbrook and work out of Midland, and we'll get you a brief exactly what they do. Mr. Bishop can address it. But they do deal with the issues across the city. And if I just make one final point, and sometimes while we grow these, a number of years ago, the Department of Local Government introduced a program for club support. And they supported local governments to have club development officers. We all took the funding for that. We significantly improved our engagement with our clubs, and now we've found those are indispensable staff in terms of resolving issues with clubs, so none of them get to you. We want to make this issue better. Our residents in Ballajura have expressed issues to do with youth crime, and we have seen a significant reduction in the public commentary on that. But Mr. Bishop, if I could, through the chair, just to address further.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, no, you're correct, Councillor Bowman. The trial project was for Ballajura. That's what we got federal grant funding for, albeit we also had to put some funding in for it. Based on the results of that trial program in Ballajura and the results, what's been recommended here is to extend that for another 2 years for the whole of the city, attacking any hotspots where there is youth outreach issues. And those hotspots can be identified by councillors, by the community, by staff, That's what's been proposed here. It's also been proposed to still seek grant funding. There is some indications post the election that there is going to be some opportunities for grant funding in this space. It's just that we have good staff who are running a good program now. We want to continue it if we can with the endorsement of council, but still seek any funding we can in this space for a 2-year trial, for the trial to extend by another 2 years.
So it's just a follow-up question on that, based on a previous briefing we received where we got told that Allenbrook was the crime capital of the city, which I said was a bit misleading, and it was youth. Would I be right to expect that these two youth outreach officers will be based at Allenbrook pretty well permanently for the next 2 years to reduce the problem?
Mr Bishop?
They'll be based wherever the hotspots are, but clearly with the populations of Ellenbrook and places like this, then yes, they will be targeting those areas. And obviously, we're proposing a 2-year extension here. It'll be subject to review and evaluation. If the results don't show that it's worth it, then we won't be continuing it.
Councillors, is there any other further questions? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. My question is on 14.1. The question is, has the city cited or reviewed the local biodiversity action plans of the neighbouring LGAs of Kalamunda and Mundaring when compiling our report or our action plan?
Thank you. Mr Vanderlyn?
Yes, that was definitely considered in this review.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Sorry, if you could just repeat that, thanks.
The answer to that is yes.
You have a further question? No? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. When is the biodiversity action plan scheduled to be renewed in the future, or next reviewed?
Sorry, did you hear that, Mr Vanderlyn?
This biodiversity strategy that is proposed to be tabled at council next week is a 5-year plan. Sorry, I just want to get to the front page there. Yeah, so it will be reviewed in 5 years. That's the 5 years from its adoption. But that doesn't mean that during that lifetime there may be modifications to it, and the way it's structured, there will be detailed actions that sit under that will be reflected through our business planning on an annual basis, and there may be changes through that process that impacts it.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Bowman.
Madam Mayor, on 15.1, and I thank staff for providing me the answer to that, which I asked what would be the cost, and they said, not paraphrasing, not specifically, basic 80,000, for a little bit more 150,000. Can I ask the follow-up question? If that motion is carried, when we have a quorum at the council meeting, if we have a quorum at the council meeting, does that mean we are then committing $80,000 or $150,000? Because I don't see it calling for a report. I see it as actually an action item, and I don't believe it's in the current budget.
Mr CEO.
Thank you, and through the chair, no. The
Oh,
item simply commits the retention of the scoreboard in the location. The timing and any works associated with it, what scale of review goes ahead with it, would be all subject to future budgets, and there is no provision for that project in next year's budget.
But obviously I'm not here to debate, but I'll ask a follow-up question from the answer that the CEO gave. The motion, if it's, I read it, and for example, the council resolves to, number 4, restore the scoreboard where needed, but to keep the original look as much as possible. Well, how much is it going to cost to restore it? And it doesn't say that we're not doing it next year. Would there not be also an expectation that if a motion was passed now, it would be getting in the budget and would be getting done next financial year?
CEO?
So through the chair, firstly, picking up your last point, no, there's no expectation it's dealt with. Remember, this is the members' motion, not our motion. it's open to the members to agree to, or members to propose back to the mover a minor modification. You might want to say where it talks about to restore the scoreboard, in future years, consider the restoration of the scoreboard. But effectively, or to even recommend deletion of items, but it does not commit you to specific funding on the scoreboard, and even the retention of the monument in its current physical location, other than keeping it at Midland Oval.
And final question, does the CEO think that those 5 motions or that recommendation is ambiguous, considering my take on it? And I expect there'll be a number of other different views around this table on what that actual motion, if passed, actually means. Because I still don't agree with you. But not that I'm here to disagree and argue, but...
I'm very pleased you're not here to disagree, argue, but can I simply point out this is the members' motion, not ours. It is open to you to qualify that with the member who seeks to move it, or as when the item comes to say to council in its current form, it is ambiguous and therefore you can't support it in its current form, when you consider how you deal with it next week.
Sorry, a follow-up question on this one. But if it's passed, as the CEO is required to implement the decisions, how would you implement that decision if it was passed, based on the wording that's there now?
So again, through the chair, if it's passed, when it comes to issue on item 4, at some time in the future, when we are making recommendations to what to do with it, we would need to say, council's previously resolved to have the scoreboard retained and restored to as near condition as it is. We would provide a detailed estimate at that point in time to do it. But I simply note, it's about keeping the Midland Oval scoreboard around the Midland Oval precinct. It might entail one day it could be moved within that precinct, but that's all it's seeking to do at this time.
And Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. Can I just get some clarification on what we actually call this Midland Oval precinct? Because I thought it was now being referred to as the new junction, yet it's being referred to as the Midland Oval precinct. I'm rather confused, and I think I'd like some clarification on what to actually call it going forward.
Thank you.
Through the chair, as you're aware, Councillor Hallett, this forms as part of the new junction development and Council's adopted plan, which includes parts of the old Midland Oval, which includes an old Midland Oval scoreboard. Now, we haven't chosen the title for this. The scoreboard is at as the old Midland Oval scoreboard. So that's why I'm simply referring to it by the vernacular.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah. Looking at the form of the motion, it says in our meeting procedures local law, which I think does apply, 2.9, notices of motion, section 2C. A motion must call for a further report to be submitted at a future ordinary meeting of council, where the motion has strategic or financial implications. Well, it's going to have financial implications because we're not going to be able to reuse the land. So the question is this motion in line with the meeting procedures local law? So if there's a doubt about whether it's got a financial impact, then it should be a report.
So through the chair, it's been submitted in accordance with the requirements. That is, it is a motion. It's been given in accordance with the 15 business days. It's open for council to question the validity of that in terms of a future meeting. It's proposing a specific proposal, not a future proposal. It's simply proposing a specific proposal that the scoreboard be kept. Now, I'd suggest, Councillor Johnson, the questions specifically to the mover of the motion about what and she's seeking to do, that would be best addressed at the council debate next week.
Well, actually, through you, Madam Mayor, to you, Mr. CEO, surely you should have pointed out to Councillor Prodovnik at the time that there are potential costs involved in this, and you should have asked her to require a report to be submitted at a future ordinary council meeting. It's pretty straightforward.
Again, Part 2C in the last line says that where the motion has strategic or financial implications. There is no strategic specific implication out of this. And in terms of the level of cost, as a financial implication, it's relatively insignificant. So you may query with the mover, as the staff did, on the need for the motion and other things, but that's something best left to debate.
And just one further point, just suggest the Mayor reads section 14 of the meeting procedures local law after you go on tonight.
Deputy
Thank
Mayor
you.
Johnson, that was your question? That was the end. Councillors, are there any further questions? No? If not, thank you very much to staff, to all the councillors tonight, to those watching at home, and I declare this meeting closed at 6:47 p.m. Thank you.